Welcome to No Flipping Excuses with Jason Lucchesi. Jason Lucchesi was the guy voted least likely to succeed by his high school peers. Today, Jason's a real estate flipping ninja Jedi Knight assassin who's taken his drive, street smarts, and never give up attitude and converted them into a real estate flipping business and freedom-based lifestyle. Here to share the truth about flipping houses, finding sellers, delivering buyers, real estate investing without the reality show hype, and all-around general business badassery. Your host, Krav Maga enthusiast, husband and father of 3, Jason Lucchesi.
Hey, what's up? It's Jason Lucchesi, and welcome to the No Flipping Excuses show. I've got a great friend of mine that's going to be joining us here on the show, Jillian Sidoti with Crowdfundinglawyers.net. And she's doing some amazing things. And what I wanted to do was I wanted to bring her on because she's extremely well-versed when it comes to putting together private money the legal and safe way. Because a lot of folks out there, they don't know the legal side of it. They just think, hey, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to talk to these folks and put together a pool of money. And I'm not sure if Jillian remembers this or not, but we met, I believe, in 2012 or 2013 at Jack Sternberg's Noteworthy conference. I was a speaker. And that was my first time ever doing a speaking gig. And that was that was a while ago. But Jillian, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me. The pleasure is truly all mine.
Awesome. So, Jillian, for folks that don't know about you and Crowdfunding Lawyer, let's talk a little bit about your background. How long have you been an attorney, and how long have you been doing real estate?
So the funny thing is when I was in law school, I didn't really even want to be a lawyer. I was just kind of in law school to do something.
Yeah.
And I know that sounds really weird and terrible, but it's absolutely the truth. And so in the middle of being in law school, actually towards the end of my law school education in the third year, I decided to start doing real estate development and started working for this firm that was doing condo conversions in San Diego. And so we would buy apartment buildings, take them down to the studs, and then sell off the individual units as condominiums. And it was amazing business at the time. This was like 2004, 2005.
Oh, yeah. Things
are going great. During that time, I graduated law school and started studying for the bar, and then took the bar exam. And then after becoming a lawyer, but not actually practicing law, of course, we saw the Great Recession start happening.
Oh, yeah.
And we kind of saw it coming. Fortunately for us, we kind of saw it coming. So we started selling off all the properties, got rid of them, and then there just weren't any deals to do. We hadn't hit the bottom yet. We weren't even close to the bottom yet, and we didn't want to be at the bottom with a bunch of properties on our hands. So just stopped doing real estate development, and I naturally moved into this area of the law because it's exactly what I was doing when I was at the real estate investment firm, which was getting all the money together, not just the loan, which was a huge part of it, but then also the private equity portion as well. So that's how I got into it. So once all of our properties were gone and I didn't have anything else to do, it was time to start practicing law. So I've been doing this since about 2006, 2007.
Oh, wow. Okay, cool. Very cool. So when we met, you obviously, you're known in our space for, having the talks on private money and involving SEC. And a lot of folks, they may not know that we talk about private money on the show. And I always make sure that folks need to talk to an attorney that is well-versed when it comes to private money. But you've been going down this path for a while, like you said, since that 06-ish range. For brand new real estate investors that are just getting started in this space, and they find maybe somebody that's interested in lending them some money, what would you maybe say to them as far as from the legal side, what they need to look out for? Because I know there's some SEC things that they need to look out for, right?
Sure. So there's a couple of things at play there. And the big thing about using private money lenders is there are some really great exemptions from registration of securities from federal securities law, from state securities law specifically. So a lot of the states, and there's some states that are more friendly than others. A lot of the states have what's called a self-executing exemption for secured notes. So in other words, if you go with a private money lender and you secure that note that you give them with a deed of trust or a mortgage on a property, and it's not fractionalized, that's really important. You can't fractionalize it. So you can't have more than one lender. You can only have one lender.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So if you do it that way, then you have what's called a self-executing exemption in most states, where you don't have to do anything. You don't have to file anything or anything like that. But regardless of that, it's still a security. There's just an exemption from the securities registration. Keeping that in mind, my biggest recommendation to you, those of you that are just starting out, it's too expensive to hire a securities attorney, is to, first and foremost, what I would do is write it all down. Write down exactly what the investor is getting into. Write down what the risks are associated with what they're getting into, and give that to the investor, because the number one thing the investor is going to say when it all goes wrong is, "Well, you didn't tell me that." And you can wave around that piece of paper saying, "Oh, but I did."
Right.
So, the best advice I can give you is to, if nothing else, just write it down. And I get it. Like, look, you're raising, $25,000, $50,000 from one investor. It doesn't make sense to call a securities attorney to put together some, lavish, huge document for you. It's silly. And I, quite frankly, I don't want to do that work. I don't want to even take your money. I want you to come to me when you're ready to move on to bigger, better properties and use multiple investors. But for now, what I want you to do is write it down. And, at the end of this, we'll talk about some solutions that we're actually coming up with at the firm to help that group of entrepreneurs who are trying to raise money and trying to do it the right way, but, don't want to pay me the big bucks.
No, that's awesome. That's awesome. And so, Jillian, let me give you an example. Like, let's say I'm an investor. Maybe I've closed a few deals before, and I'm looking to get private money because right now I've been wholesaling and I see a really big opportunity with either doing rehabbing or some buy and hold strategies. And let's say I attend a self-directed IRA meeting, and my whole goal is to find somebody there that has cash and they want to invest it using their self-directed IRA. Is there a period of time that I would have to wait in order to ask for funds from that individual?
So that's a great question. And there's a couple of things at play there. There's a huge question of how are you conducting yourself at this meeting? And if you're getting up at the front of the room and saying, "Hey guys, everybody, I'm looking for investors, please call me," that's a problem. Like,
Okay.
We don't want to be doing that for a lot of reasons. We don't want to be doing that. Mostly because we're probably stepping into a securities law we don't want to step into.
Right.
The second reason we don't want to do that is because it's super unattractive. No one wants to hear about the guy who's looking for money.
Right.
So, yeah. So we want to be careful with that. And then the third thing is there really a passage of time, or is there really, this thing called, I'm just going to bring it up and put it out there, and then we'll talk about it and be done with it. But the thing about the 3-touch rule, I often hear about, "Hey, I heard I need to get 3 touches before I take money from anybody." And that's a great idea to have that kind of communication with an investor, but it's not legally true.
Okay.
There is no such thing as a legal 3-touch rule. And so what are and also there's no rule, the friends and family rule. There's no friends and family rule either.
Okay.
Nowhere in the law is it written that you're allowed to take money from your friends and family unfettered. As far as the securities laws are concerned, you have no friends and you have no family. So.
Oh man, great. Go into the depressed stage now.
Yeah, exactly, right? So those are all those, kind of big picture things. But let's talk about what you should and could do. So if you're going to a meeting and you're meeting people and you're getting cards and you're having these conversations, what the law says is that before we're taking money from any investor, and I'm really painting things with a very broad brush right now, so keep that in mind. what the law says is that we have to have a substantive pre-existing relationship with an investor prior to taking their money. And what a substantive pre-existing relationship is defined as is that you must have intimate knowledge of one's financial ability to invest. And you can get this knowledge with what's called an investor qualification form. So here's how your operation should be. And I'm going to talk about this not just from a legal perspective, but from a marketing perspective as well, and effectiveness. Because it does no good if you know the law and you follow the law if you can't actually raise the money.
Right.
So what do we want to do? We have a conversation with somebody. We say, hey, yeah, I'm starting to flip and I'm always looking for good money lenders. If you're interested, let me know. Let's just say that person calls you and says, hey, I talked to you at that self-directed IRA meeting. What deals do you have? You should be a little standoffish at this point. And here's why. One, it makes you a little hard to get,
Yeah.
There used to be a book on dating called The Rules. I think that's what it was called.
Oh, really?
And it was for women, right? On how to get a guy to like. It was popular when I was in college, and so this book, The Rules, was really great because it gave you like these top 10 ways of raising, of dating men. And a lot of it had to do with like playing hard to get.
Yeah.
And you should do the same thing when you're raising money, is play a little hard to get. So this functions in both a marketing sense and in a legal sense, because what you want to do is get that investor qualification form. So somebody calls you and says, hey, I'm interested in investing. This is your opportunity to say, whoa. Let's make sure this relationship works. If you don't mind, fill out my investor qualification form and I'll see if I have any opportunities for you. And there you go. You've handled yourself legally, and now you're also making it so that your investor is you're playing a little hard to get with the investor. So that's the first step I would take is getting that investor qualification form.
Playing hard to get. So no, that's great, Jillian. So what does the investor qualification form look like from you? I know some of the listeners out there, they might be like, well, what is this? I don't know what it is. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
It can be a very simple form. And it just basically asks the investor some very straight questions. Like, for example, how much money do you make? And it doesn't have to be that blunt. Generally speaking, what you'll see on these forums is that it'll ask them, do you make more than $200,000 a year as an individual?
Oh, okay.
And that it will say, or do you make more than $300,000 a year as a married couple? Or do you have a net worth of at least $1 million? And then if you say no to those questions, then it will go on to ask you, well, what's your experience in investing? And the purpose of that is to really just make sure that the investor is sufficiently sophisticated in order to invest in your deal. Because you don't want somebody who doesn't know what they're doing at all. I understand, when we go to these self-directed IRA things, or we're going out and looking for new investors, we're looking for people who perhaps don't have as much experience as us in the investing field, and that's great, and that's who we're going to look to help, right? For sure. But at the same time, we don't want to be taking in people who are like, well, what does it mean to be secured by a deed of trust and a mortgage? Like, we don't want that. We don't want people who ask, for example, is it guaranteed?
Oh, yeah.
If anybody asks you that, no. Or say, well, and we don't want anybody who says, well, I really think a reasonable rate of return is 25%. So
right.
So and I know a lot of you out there are getting great deals and making doubling your money and all that stuff. But if your investor is coming to you and saying that that's what they want to make, run. So yeah.
Well, the other thing too is it's not a smart thing for us to let investors know, like, hey, I could get you double-digit returns. It would be foolish for us to even say that. So, like, if I'm having a conversation with somebody that I know has money, they know about real estate, but they don't want to do the dirty work per se. I always let them tell me what they're looking for, because most people get freaked out if you say a double-digit number such as 11 or 12%. They think it's too good to be true, and most of the time that scares them off. They never end up lending you money. I know from previous experience. The other is option B, where you let them say, hey, I want, 8% and 2 points. That's more doable. And plus you just allowed yourself to get a lower rate from that individual. So I always think it's best to just ask the question and find out their problem and what they're looking for, as far as us giving them a solution to them earning a rate of return, which is not guaranteed, because obviously real estate, poses risks just like anything else. So
no, and those of us that are in the real estate field and do it all the time, don't see it as much of a risk. But I'll tell you, the SEC and the state securities boards see it very, very differently. and Jason, if you don't mind, and I don't want to be so bold, but I'd like to change your thinking a little bit on how you're approaching these.
Yeah, by all means.
I think it's smart in the sense that you're kind of making that investor tell you what they want or what their expectations are. I think there's a level of real intelligence there, instead of just coming out of the gate and offering this ridiculous return.
Sure.
But I actually would love to see you do it this way instead. Take your deal. First of all, I think one of the things that I find, especially the newer real estate entrepreneurs do, is that they discount their time. In other words, they don't give themselves enough credit for the work and effort and time they're spending on doing, this wealth building, if you will.
I agree.
And you can, and I don't want to say that anybody can write a check, but you can always get more money. You cannot get more time.
Right.
So I like to see my real estate entrepreneurs really, truly value their time when dealing with private money, because although I want you to be the most amazing steward to your investors' money, I also want you to consider the fact that they can get more money, but you cannot get more time. So with that being said, the way I like to approach these things is like this, or direct people to approach things is like this. You start with the deal and you say, look, the deal is going to make this much money. I need to make, so the deal is going to make X. I need to make Y in order to be a happy person, in order to be sufficiently motivated. And then you take X minus Y, which will give you Z. And Z is not what you pay your investors. Z is what you say, okay, this is what's left over once I'm happy. And right? Yep. And so you have Z. And then you take, I guess I got to go back to the beginning of the alphabet. Perhaps I didn't start on our But so then you take A. So you take Z and then A. And what's A? A is our contingency. A is our oh crap, it didn't turn out the way we expected it to number. So you take Z, then you take minus A, and then B, that number is what you offer your investors. And you tell them, look, I'm comfortable with paying you B. Screw up my letters. I'm comfortable with paying you B. If this is something that works for you, then, let's put pen to paper and we'll get going on the deal. And that way you take the control completely away from the investor. You maintain control, and you maintain control of what you're making. And all the while you're being completely fair to your investor, because it's what the deal and what you can handle.
No, I really like that approach. Because from a book I read not too long ago called Pitch Anything, that talks about, being in control and all that good stuff. So that, it's always good to be in control when you're talking to these private money lenders. So that is great. That
is one of my favorite books. I have a personal relationship with Oren Klaff, the author of that book. Yeah, and he is a great guy. He came and spoke at one of my events, and he did the keynote, and it was just amazing, and just talked all about that, all about maintaining control. But great book recommendation.
Oh yeah, it's so we've got a large, not to get off topic here, but I love books, especially this time of the year here in the Midwest. We've got 5 acres, so it takes me 3.5 hours to mow. And
oh my gosh.
I can normally nail out a book, an audio book, within one mow session. So I'm always amped to mow, and everybody's like, that would take forever. Why do you enjoy it? I'm like, well, I'm mowing, but I'm also learning because there's been lots of great ideas that have come from mowing the lawn. And every once in a while, I still love to get back and listen to Oren's book. I think, were you ever good friends with Nathan Jurowitz?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, he's the one who recommended them.
Yes. So he's the one that got Oren on the phone, and I remember I was right there with him in Tampa, and I was reading the book at the time for the first time. That was a long time ago, and I was like, wow, this is such a great book. So not to go completely off track, but definitely a highly recommended book. I guess that goes with the question I was going to ask at the end. What's a favorite book, a business book that you would recommend? I'm sure that would probably be it right there.
That's one of my faves. I love that one. I'm trying to think of what I read recently. Oh, 10X by Grant Cardone.
Yeah.
Just recently read that one. I mean, there's so many good books out there. And so many great ideas. It's hard to keep track.
No, I agree with you. So no, those are great books. I love both of those books. And to get back, just maybe like a little bit longer here. We won't take up too much more time. I know you're busy. I'm busy. But some of these folks that are in states to where they don't have maybe the cash investors, so maybe they need to do like a webinar, and maybe they discuss on the webinar some of the properties that they've wholesaled and maybe what those properties would have brought in if they would have rehabbed them, and just talk about the what ifs, and then at the end maybe saying, hey, if you'd like to talk more about some of the properties I presented, or if you'd like to have a further conversation on maybe properties that you could be getting yourself, how would you approach it? I know I talked to an attorney not too long ago. It was long ago. And that's what I was doing at the time. I was doing webinars, and I say something maybe a little bit different at the end. I just say, hey, if you'd like more information on how we can work together, feel free, fill out the information. We'll have a talk, and then establish that line of communication early on, establish that relationship. But because one of the things that we talk about in some of the training programs we have is raising some private money, and for folks that come up with the excuse, and we're all about no flipping excuses. Hey, I don't have any money in my area. Everybody seems to be broke. What do you think of the webinar?
That is a lie you were telling yourself.
It is.
First of all, I'm going to get back to the webinar, but I want to address that little lie. There's no money in my area. Do you live in Compton, and can you not leave Compton? Is that what the issue is? Like, I don't understand. Or, and that's not even fair to Compton. Here's the thing. Like, no matter where you live, there's a fancy hotel.
Yeah. There is.
Within probably an hour drive. Okay, I'll give you the benefit of the doubt, and maybe you live like in the middle of nowhere. But think about it. Wyoming, which is in the middle of nowhere, as far as I'm concerned, I'm in Southern California. That sounds kind of snotty. Wyoming, which we'll call in the middle of nowhere, it has some of the richest people in the country living in it. So, I just want to point out that the Oracle of Omaha lives in Omaha, so.
Nice. Nice.
And Berkshire Hathaway, Nebraska. So
that's true.
So if you're saying, oh, there's no one around and there doesn't any money, you're lying to yourself, or you haven't sufficiently looked. I'm pretty sure most towns have a doctor, or a lawyer, or some other professional who's probably making more than other people in the general vicinity.
Right.
So, and every state has politicians. So, so what am I trying to say? You're probably within an hour's driving distance to a fancy hotel, and go to that fancy hotel bar and hang out and make some friends. And there you go. And most places have charitable dinners. You can go to a charitable dinner and meet some people there. So
right.
It's all you're lying to yourself, or you just don't want to leave your house, which I understand. So let's go back to the webinar and talk about how to do it from there. So if you're going to do a webinar, I had a client who was very, very successful with raising money in this fashion, and there's two actual ways you can do it successfully. One, you could do the webinar and straight out at the end of it say, who wants to invest with me? And if you do that, Then when you take in money from those investors, and again, this is very 30,000 foot view things. There's a lot of details in here that I'm not getting into, but if you do that, if you are so bold as to advertise on that webinar and say, who wants to invest with me? Call me tomorrow and we'll talk all about it, blah, 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 blah. When you take those investors in, you must be assured that they are what are called accredited investors. Because you use general solicitation. If you use general solicitation, then you are restricted to using only accredited investors. An accredited investor is somebody who makes at least $200,000 a year as an individual, $300,000 a year as a married couple, or has a net worth of $1 million. And you heard me say that earlier in this presentation. So you have that way. The second way you can do it is be vague. Here are things, do an education-based marketing webinar, and that's it, where you're educating. And that's what my client did. He would say, here are some deals I've done. I use self-directed IRA money. Here's how I use the self-directed IRA money. Here's how it worked out. And if you're interested in hearing more, or, continuing to follow me, here's how you can get in touch with me. But no solicitation for actual investors, and just kept it strictly educational on how they did it, and literally taught people how to do it themselves. And usually the conclusion that was drawn by the webinar attendees was, oh, you actually know what you're doing, so I'm just going to call you instead.
Right.
And actually, to me, that's the better form of marketing anyhow, is the pull as opposed to the push.
Yeah.
So you're pulling the investor in to make their own, conclusions, as opposed to pushing them into something that they otherwise would not have done. So to me, it's the better marketing approach anyhow, and you don't have that same restriction. You should still make sure that your investors are sufficiently sophisticated enough to invest in your deal, but they don't have to necessarily be accredited.
Now, from your standpoint, what would you say the person needs to be as far as sophisticated? Like they may have done a couple of transactions before. Like what would you like, or not you specifically, but what would that need to kind of look like in order for us to be like, okay, this person knows enough what they're doing, what they're getting involved in? Like where would you draw those parameters at?
So this is a test that I like to refer to as a subjective objective test. And what I mean by that is it's a subjective test that you must be objective about. So, and what do I mean by that? Because we don't know what it looks like. Like you might have a doctor who is very educated and has dabbled in the stock market, but has never invested in real estate before. And I wouldn't be so dismissive as to say that they're not sufficiently sophisticated to understand the risks associated with investing. They're clearly highly educated. They've done some investing before. There you go. Yeah. On the flip side, you also might have somebody who has a GED and no real formal education, but has done some of their own investing, perhaps owns a small multifamily or owns a couple of rental properties here and there, or bought a note once or twice. They too would be sufficiently sophisticated to invest in your deal. So again, the test is a subjective test. We have no real parameters for it. The test is actually said sufficiently sophisticated to understand the risks associated with investing. And so how do we say that? You have to objectively measure that and say, well, here are the reasons I believe that. Here are the classes this person's taken. Here's the education this person has. Here are the investments this person's done before. And that's how you come up with that. And I'll tell you right now, I've had some clients who've been saved by that investor qualification form that asked those sophistication questions, where an investor got mad and said, we weren't sufficiently sophisticated to invest in this deal. Oh, well, you said you were, and here are the reasons why I believed that, because what you said and what you claimed you knew. So yeah, that's what you want to, that's the approach you want to take.
Got to ask the questions.
Okay.
Got to ask those questions, right?
Yeah. I thought you were about to say, I got to ask you this question.
Oh, no. I was like putting you on the spot. No, that's great. That's great. So let me ask you this before we kind of tie into talking a little bit about how folks can reach out to you. What would you say are some of your top tips for maybe finding folks? And with the second option that you gave for the webinar example, we're talking about these folks can be both non-accredited and accredited investors, right?
Right. So they can both be accredited and non-accredited. Again, I just want you to make sure that they're sufficiently sophisticated to invest.
Gotcha. Yeah. So let's say, I know you mentioned the charitable dinners, going to like the nice, fancy, expensive hotels and meeting people at the bar there. You know, that's actually one I haven't heard before, but it's brilliant because that's where most folks probably go.
Right.
You know, so what other top tips would you have for folks maybe reaching out and finding other investors that they can, potentially get private money from?
I mean, like find a hobby, right? Like anybody who has a hobby generally has disposable income for that hobby. So, for example, even things as simple as like comic book shows. And the way I always tell people to approach these things is don't approach them from the sense that I'm going to look for investors now, but rather I'm going to look for new friends or new contacts or just network in general, because you'll never be successful if you have the complete mindset that all I'm doing is going to look for money, because it'll be on the top of your mind and you'll say all the wrong things. So you got to go with the attitude of just, I'm trying to connect with people and have a good time and make new friends and make new connections. So just like, honestly, cultivate those things that are most interesting to you. And I use comic books because I think that is something that is terribly overlooked in terms of something that people have disposable income for. Yeah. People have income to buy comic books. They probably have income to invest. Now, whether they're going to invest with you or not is a totally different story. My favorite place, of course, is the charitable dinner, because these are people who have disposable income to, basically support something that doesn't necessarily give them anything except a good feeling of doing good. Yeah. So, and those are the best types of investors. So, another example I always like to give is that my parents, and they weren't doing this to get investors, but my parents joined a yacht club once. Oh, yeah. Many years. Yeah, they joined this yacht club like years and years ago. And I said to them, oh my God, are you getting a boat? Like, when are you getting a boat? And they're like, oh, no, we're not getting a boat. We just like the food at the yacht club. That's too funny. Yeah. So, I mean, but most of the people at the yacht club have a boat. So those are kinds of things you want to look around and see what your local area has to offer. Country clubs, golf clubs, tennis clubs, things, just find a hobby, find things that you like to do and go for it that way. To me, that's always the best way to raise money.
And the one thing too is don't come across as the slime ball that all you want to do is just look at those people as dollar figures for you. Like, my thing is, if I can't come across genuine to you, then we probably aren't going to be good friends. So I always try and find people that I can establish relationships with. And it's so funny that you mentioned the comic book thing, because one of the nerdy things about me is, well, not anymore. I love collecting like basketball cards because I grew up in Chicago, and Michael Jordan obviously was somebody I grew up idolizing. So when I came here to Indianapolis, I stopped for a while, probably sophomore year of high school, because I had more things on my mind, like basketball, girls, the things that teenage boys get into at that age. But when I came back here, I started talking to folks, and it'd be unbelievable. There would be so many people that have money, because nowadays it's totally different. When I used to do cards back when I was in 8th grade, 9th grade, it would be very inexpensive. Nowadays, to buy a case of cards, like new cards, it's like $3,000-$4,000 for just a case, and it's crazy. It's a gamble. Sometimes you could hit like a $50,000 or $100,000 card, but sometimes you may get some duds. But these guys shell out the money, and I was just like, oh man, this. And I started talking to the owner, and he ended up doing some stuff with us. And I didn't even think to ask him. We knew each other for like 90 days, 120 days. And he was like, so what do you do? And I'm like, well, I'm a real estate investor. And he was like, oh, cool. I've dibble dabbled in that before. And I was like, well, let's go out to lunch. And we ended up going out to lunch. He's like, oh man, I want to do some stuff with you. So we just ended up doing some deals together, and he made some really good returns, and he was happy with it. because he was making jack squat in his CDs and stocks. But you bring up some really great points. I didn't think about sharing the comic book card story, but gosh, those people do have some money.
Yeah, no, they really, really do. And they, generally speaking, are not investing, by themselves, or, and they need somebody like you guys out there who have the opportunities. So, and just remember that you have the opportunities, and you're spending time watching this webinar, and you're spending time watching, other presentations, or going to meetings and going to conventions, and things like Noteworthy, for example, and getting yourself educated. And a lot of people inherently are lazy and don't want to do any of those things. And they're relying on you to do it. So don't discount the value of doing that. And remember that, and have confidence in raising money. Have confidence in knowing that you actually have the opportunity that the investor so desires.
That's true. That is great. So with that being said, Jillian, how can people get a hold of you? What's the best way for them to reach out to you if they want to start working with you?
You guys can all email me at Jillian@crowdfundinglawyers.net. But I really want to encourage you to go to that website, because there's tons of free education on there. And I also want to encourage you to go to the website privatemoneyrockstar.com. We have some webinars and things and educational materials on there. And also look for us on Facebook, privatemoneyrockstar.com, and or Private Money Rockstar and Crowdfunding Lawyers, because we also, have discussions on there and have information on there as well. And I'm happy to help anybody who needs it.
Oh, I love that name, Private Money Rockstar. That's a good one. That is a good one. Nice.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm coming out with a new book.
Oh, cool.
I'm hoping. Yeah, I'm working on it right now, and I talk all about, because before I was even in the real estate industry, I was in the music industry, and I talk about the sameness, if you will, the similarities.
Yeah.
I guess a better word between trying to become a rock star and raising private money.
Oh, nice. When's your book gonna come out?
I don't know. I keep adding to it. I'm a little way into all the things that I could put into it. I had another book called The Crowdfunding Myth, which is available on Amazon.
Oh, cool.
But it's a short little read, and this one's going to be a little more comprehensive and more of a manual. So I'm really excited about it. I was planning on coming out with it coming up here in June, but I actually might push it out to the middle of summer, only because I want to add more things to it.
Nice. Well, let us know. Let us know, because we'll have you back on so you can talk about your book, and we could let the listeners know about it. But guys, if you want more information from Jillian, the crowdfundinglawyers.net and privatemoneyrockstar.com, definitely check those out. Definitely recommend it. Jillian knows her stuff. I've had tons of folks in the space that have Jillian come speak at their events, come on their podcast, do webinars with them, do training programs with them. Jillian knows her stuff. So I wanted to get her on here. We've been trying to get this going for a while now, so I'm glad we were able to do this. Jillian, do you have any final words for our listeners?
I just want to tell everybody out there, have confidence in what you're doing, and don't go into bad deals just because you want to get into a deal or you already spent so much time on it. And don't let your investors control the deal. Control the deal from the very beginning. You're the one. You're the one who knows what's going on, and you need to value your time. So definitely do that. No,
I agree. Control the deal, control the outcome. That is awesome. That is great. Yeah. So, folks, I hope you enjoyed this episode of the No Flipping Excuses show. If you did, leave us a 5-star review. Leave us a comment if there's anything in particular you want us to cover on upcoming episodes. We'll be more than happy to look at that and cover it on upcoming episodes for you. So leave us that 5-star review, leave us the comment, and hopefully we'll be able to cover that on an upcoming episode for you. If you need to reach out to us for anything whatsoever, support@jasonluchesi.com, or call us by phone number 317 900-1307, and we'll have all the details from this show below for you with Jillian's links. And if you need anything, make sure you feel free, reach out to her. She's got some really great resources for you on private money and everything else in between. But other than that, I'm Jason Lucchesi. Thanks for joining us today on the No Flipping Excuses show. I'll talk to you later. Bye now.
Thanks for listening. For show notes and links to anything discussed on today's program, visit noflippingexcuses.com. If you'd like to call the show, dial 317-900-1307, 24/7. Leave a message with your first name and where you're calling from, and include your question, comment, or concern. Who knows? You might end up on the air with Jason Lucchesi. If you like the show, be sure to subscribe on iTunes or Stitcher. The links are posted at noflippingexcuses.com. Remember, you can close more deals now, make your own rules, and design and live an amazing life without having some jerk-off boss tell you what to do. Share noflippingexcuses.com with like-minded people you know who are ready for badassery, crushing it in real estate, and enjoying freedom to whatever you like, whenever you like it.